Hello, everybody. Welcome. I see lots of people joining in. That's great. Here we are at Blab. For some of us, it's our first time. If it's your first time blabbing, could you just put a 1 in the comments? And the way that you do that is you just go down to the, awesome. You go down to the send a message, just hit it, and we got lots of newbies. So that's good. I watch a lot of Blabs, but I've only hosted a few. So I'm just learning. So bear with me too. It's a great forum for a conversation like this, as well as don't be afraid to use the side panel for conversation as well. Just a couple other things. If you look to your left-hand side, there's something that says Tell a Little Bird. If you click on that, it will put this link on your Twitter if you have Twitter followers. If you think there's somebody that really would want to hear this, it'll say, oh, I got to get over there and do that. And if you do that, it'll spread the word. Or on Facebook, there's one, Tell Your Friends. Also, if you could see these little hands down on the right-hand corner of my screen and Mia's screen and Janet's screen, that's how you can give props to people. You just kind of click on them.
Wow.
And it's kind of like, yay you. And you can give, I think, up to 500, and then it cuts you off because some people are really like about it. So that's how the people presenting kind of have an idea that you like what they're saying, or you agree, or you want to hear more. And in Periscope, it's hearts. You can give hearts. You can also highlight any of the people over here. We're going to do introductions in a minute. If you go over top of their name, maybe you like something they said. If you go over top of their name, there's a star, so you can star it to say, hey, I like that. Or you can hit the arrow to reply to something they've asked. Like maybe they've asked a comment, or they've made some comment about something that you want to add a little bit to. So that is just kind of the bare bones of this. If I think of anything else, otherwise we're pretty informal, at least a lot of the blabs that I'm on. But my job as moderator will be just to kind of try to keep things moving along, but also respect that there may be some time that we want to expand, and we can always come back another time because our time is very precious for sure. So let's just start with some quick. I'm going to use my timer because I am a timer-aholic. I have to set a timer for everything. Otherwise, the kids would never have time to work. I'd be talking all the time. So, hang on. Can you still see me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
Okay, my screen just went nutty. Here it is. Okay, so I'm going to start the timer for 5 minutes. So my name is Tracy Bowes. I'm known as the sarcastic teacher on the online teacher community. And I teach here in just outside of Calgary, Canada. And the workshop method is not very well known. People have heard of it. The professors teach of it, but it just hasn't. The workshopping method just hasn't been. The PD hasn't been here, and I've been doing workshop for about 10 years. And when I saw that Lucy had more of a middle school approach, I kind of hopped over to follow that. So I wanted more structure. So I teach grade 8. And I've taught all the grades, middle school, I've taught high school and elementary, and this is year 25. So this is keeping me fresh because it's just so exciting to go to school and teach every day, especially learning all these new things. So that's me. And then Mia, if you want to go, and then Janet, if you want to go, just tell us where you're from, a little bit about yourself and your experience with the units of study. Because for me, I have very little experience with the units of study. I went to the reading intensive this summer at Teachers College, and it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. I got to go back as soon as possible, but I'm still learning. Okay, people on the side, comments, if you want to put your first name and where you're from and anything, we'll be kind of looking back and forth as well. Okay, hit it, Mia.
Well, I'm Mia Pardo, and I live in Los Angeles and work at Pressman Day School, which is a Jewish day school. And I'm so sorry. Hold on one second. Can you leave the room, sweetie?
It always happens.
So I've got my daughter here, and she's.
Where's my water?
So and yeah, sorry about that. And we started doing writing workshop. Our administrators purchased the whole writing curriculum for middle school last 2 summers ago, and we practiced with one unit last year. The middle school teachers. I teach 8th grade, and this year we're sort of diving in and doing everything. I went to the Institute this summer for writing.
Get your free
college, and I went to the August Institute this summer.
And was that writing or reading?
And And just in writing. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's
All
so
right.
much, I really got so much out of it. It's ridiculous how much I got out. I've never had PD like that before. The one thing that I didn't really get enough out of is the topic of tonight's conversation. I felt so.
Absolutely. But we touched on it. Like in the reading one, I felt that I had a nice little touch to it, but I have quite a bit of background in assessment, but I know for some of the newer teachers, they definitely needed some more. But hey, that's why we're here to support each other, because every school is different. Now, sometimes, Mia, your sound was kind of going in and out, and there was a bit of a delay. So if that happens, just keep going. But if I think that it's best if you hop out, I'll just raise my hand like this, and then that'll tell you that that's what we're hearing. Okay? Thank you very much. Okay, Janet, tell us all about you.
So I work in New York City. I actually work for Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. I taught grades 3 to 8 for 15 years. I looped up from 3 to 8 twice with the same class. I'm familiar with the units of study. I do data and assessment for the project. I didn't realize you'd be able to see me, everybody, but
You look awesome.
And,
Right.
the grading system is interesting. So just here to join in.
Okay.
Great. Thanks so much. I see in the comments that we've got Audra as well, who's also a staff developer at the Teachers College. And Janet ran a couple of the smaller groups that I took in those little sessions. So I met you in one of your assessment things, I think. So it's good to see you. I'm seeing that we've got some literacy coaches. Kathy's here. I've seen her on the Facebook page quite a bit. Audra, anybody else, if you want to join in, you really want to be part of this, or if Mia and Janet, if anytime you don't want to be part of this, just hit the X, you'll still be here. You'll just move over to the comments. And if anybody wants to be part of the main area, just hit call in. Can you see the call in on your screen? Because it's not on my screen. It should say call in one of the spots. Does it say that?
I don't see it.
No? Okay, just a minute. Let me. What about now? Does it say call in?
Where would I see it? Maybe I'm not looking in the right place after all.
It would be right underneath you, kind of beside Janet in the spot, because you can have 4 people in here. Is it just blank space?
Open seat.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So, but if you click it, does anything happen?
Nope.
Okay. So maybe someone else, if you want to try it, it should call in. I've unlocked the seat, so it should be available. But feel free, if you'd like to make eye contact with people and be part of it, then by all means. Okay, I see we have some people from Chicago, New Jersey, of course, our New York City folks, all sorts of great people here. So awesome. And thank you for introducing. We can watch the replay later and get some of the comments as well. Okay, my timer is telling me that our introductions are done. So let's move on to the next part, which I think will kind of guide our discussions. And that's on assessment policies. What kind of policies do we have in our schools so that when we have these discussions in a few minutes, we know where you're coming from. So if you say, I need to put a number on it, we know that that's a policy in your school or your district or whatever. If you don't have it, if it's very autonomous, if it's just, no, I can do whatever, that's fine too. But I have a very district mandated policy because we were the pilot for it. We developed the standard-based grading for middle school in this area. There were no other middle schools. So now it's the whole time. Hi, Mrs. Bose. Am I allowed to watch? Who is this? This is one of my students.
I'm bored and
it says I was showing them Periscope and Blab this morning as a tool. And so I saw that one of them signed up. Of course you can watch, hon. We're not going to talk about anything bad, are we?
No,
Janet, you're not going to say any bad things?
Tell them to join in.
I told her she'd probably be bored stiff because all we're talking about is grading. But, she could tell us about grading and the way that we grade and things like that. So I'll start with my school. As I said, we're standard-based grading. We're a 6 to 9 school. And we have 4 outcomes for each grade. So for LA, I have 4 outcomes that I have to report on. And for social studies, I have 4 outcomes I have to report on. I also teach drama, but I just need to give a straight one one grade for those ones. We measure our outcomes in the achievement descriptors of mastery, progressing, beginning, and limited. And we do have some in-between ones, so that if we have a couple in each column, we can go in an advancing or we can go in a emerging. So every assignment that I make for kids, every assessment, I try to incorporate all 4 of those strands, and that helps me know if it's a really rich assessment, because I'm measuring all the 4 strands. And our strands are not reading, writing, representing. Our strands are focused on skills, like comprehending, exploring ideas, managing ideas, and communicating clearly. So as you can see, they can go across discussions, representations, everything. So that's how we assess in our school. So I'm writing 4 marks for every assignment that I give kids on a rubric, entering all those into my grade book, times 150 kids for every assignment. So, it's getting a little hairy. Those get transferred to the report card, and the parents can see clearly across the board, and it's not an average, it's not a smush, it's a mode. It's which one is the most, and we can overrule any of the computer decisions. So if a student has a lot of progressing, but they have 2 masteries, which are the highest level, and we really feel that those 2 masteries were the highest level, like those kind of overshadowed all those progressing, we could bypass that and put in a mastery there if we want. We have the autonomy to do that. So our parents could see exactly where their strengths are and exactly where their weaknesses are, but it's a huge learning curve. We've been doing it for 7 years. So it's huge for sure. Okay, so that's where I'm at with reporting and grading in my school here in Canada. Mia, what about you?
I would rather not talk about our reporting right now, because I think it's at this point very complicated, and we are autonomous, and we're working a lot of things through right now. So I'd rather sort of not elaborate on it. It's too long. It's too complicated to go into. But so, yeah.
Do you percentages or letter grades?
But yeah, it's in process.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Great. Janet, what are you seeing in a lot of the schools and things that you're visiting?
There are 2 really good systems. One is where they're writing narratives more than giving grades, so that they're looking at the kids in all different parts of the workshop and all different parts of the content. And they're thinking about where the kids are. And they're not grading it on a standards base, but they're grading it on where the kids are entering and then how far the kids progress within a certain time period. And then there's another one where the kids are graded on a 1, 2, 3, 4 rubric. And the 1, 2, 3, 4 rubric includes everything from talk to reading notebooks to writing notebooks to across content area work to using the progressions, using the rubrics, using the writing checklists. So there's 2 different ways, and we do it by the computer system in New York. So there's no more paper anymore, which sometimes could be good and sometimes can cause disasters because the computers break down. We kind of make sure that we're not just grading it on one thing, we're grading it on a lot of different things, because what we noticed is sometimes the kids get closed in to one certain grade, and we've tried to grow that. The best report card, though, that I see is the narrative one, where we're actually writing things about the kids to the parents. It makes more sense. At least as a parent myself, I can understand what the teacher's trying to tell me.
Right. We're finding that our parents, they're finding it too much writing, because our comments are massive, because we're commenting on 4 totally different strands, to the point where they actually put a limit on our comments because the system couldn't handle them. And the parents were saying it was just too much because the system didn't have appropriate spacing. So it was coming out as just a big mass. So on our report cards, we try to do it a little bit more point form, whereas in our rubrics and our communications like that, our non-formals, everything's definitely narrative. Good. Interesting to see. Great. Kathy,
hi.
Welcome.
It's nice to finally see you since I've been commenting so much.
Yes. Can you just tell us a little bit first about where you're from and stuff, and then tell us about your grading
Sure.
system?
I'm from Wisconsin. I teach at a really small school. I've got 65 students, so nice and small. I went to New York 2 years ago for Reader's Workshop, and then we implemented the writing workshop. They bought us all the units of study, and now we're trying to figure out the best way to report, because our grading is, we have the grade book, and we've been taking we call them the Lucy strands, elaboration 1, elaboration 2, and we put that all in the grade book, but of course, we're not completely standards-based, so it smushes into an average, which, when we look at the rubrics, we use that beginning of the year compared to end of the year, and of course, parents right now are seeing C's, D's, and F's, when that's just showing right now they don't have that skill, but that's something we're going to work on.
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about that, about your comment, trying to get my head around it. So I'll kind of mention a few things that I'm hoping to try with the progressions in my class too, so maybe we'll come up with something. Great. In the comments, if you have anything you want to add, please feel free to, or if you want to come in, just say, can I jump in? And then that'll show one of us that we just need to hop out and let them in, and people can come and go as they please. I don't know about you guys, but I do much better with a face-to-face than constantly typing comments. Great. So here up in Canada, it's mostly percentages, and it's usually one mark per subject. So pretty much all the other schools, you get like a 75 for language arts and an 80, and then the comments tell. So that's kind of where we're going from. So that brings us to our concerns. First of all, how are we assessing? Obviously, we're using rubrics for our writing. I just can't imagine any other way now. Like, I think my first 10 years of teaching, we didn't have them. We were just kind of making our own little checklists and make kind of something do with it. But I can't imagine not having that nowadays. So we're obviously all using rubrics, but does anybody feel comfortable talking about specifically, are you using the Lucy rubrics? And again, I always just refer to them as the Lucy rubrics or the Lucy lessons, so bear with me. Does anybody want to share what they're using as rubrics and things?
We're just using Lucy as well.
Okay. So you're trying to translate those progressions to an actual number grade. Okay. Would it be possible to have a separate rubric but use those as formative?
So what do you mean by that?
So like, for example, something that I do with some of my things, like for example, the progressions, I wasn't going to have those on my rubric. I was going to have, obviously I'm required to use the system that I use. I'm going to be working through the progression as a long-term goal throughout the year and advancing them as per the goal. Where are they on the progression? So one of the comments in reading would be, you are at the appropriate progression as stated in our conversations, and have many a conversation about those. I have anchor charts all over my room. I have things, for example, reading logs. I think that got brought up in one of the things too. I didn't know how I was going to assess that. So it took a while to get the kids finding out what their goals are, because it's a pain in the butt when you haven't written in a reading log for 6 or 7 years or ever to get into that habit. So I started looking at whether they are having, I call it ambitious goals. Are you reading the amount you're supposed to? Right now we're saying 45 minutes a night. Are you reading that? And I encourage honesty. So if they say they're not reading at all, I say thank you. You're not at grade level, like you're not at my expectation, but I respect you so much for doing that. How can I help you? Please set an ambitious goal. And if they're setting ambitious goals to improve, then that is part of the progression. Whether they get to 45 minutes a night or not is part of that. So that's where I'm saying I'm using kind of a progression for reading logs on the down low, but I actually have a mark within mastery.
Like in thinking about the progressions, at least to me, when you use a progression, you want to make systematic changes. And the progression is kind of based on a year-long goal. But the ways to get to reach that progression is where the scoring and the grades come in. So to me, like, it gives powerful feedback to the kids because it's a consistent message that never changes. One of the things that I think about with the progression is that you can pick little pieces of what the kids are doing, have the kids really assess it, and then kind of see, like, is there a targeted section that the kids need to improve on? So when we score here, we kind of make sure that we're keeping the progression as our main focus, because that way it's a consistent message between the kids, between outside of the classroom people, between other grades, and we norm the progression so that everybody's kind of grading on this in the same page, in the same ways. And if we'd used other grades, then that message would kind of not be as strong. So one thing to think about is that you want a systematic change for the school and for the kids, and that's where the progression comes in.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Are you able to hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
When you say progression, do you mean the rubric?
The rubric.
The rubric? Okay. Because Janet, and for everyone else, the thing that I'm really grappling with is the idea that from when we use, I have a lot of confusion, but when we use the progression, so if a student is using an 8th grade checklist,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe they're not yet for everything on the checklist, maybe they need to go down a checklist, and let's say they're handed a 7th grade checklist, because we talked a lot about that in the Institute, that the students can sort of choose which checklist they're working off of. But what I'm finding is that the checklist for 7th grade, narrative writing is the unit we just did, it is not exactly the thing. The skills are not, don't seem to be the what would come right before. They don't seem to match exactly to the 8th grade. And that's the problem I'm having, because like normally when I've used rubrics in the past, and that's my my framework, it was like, if in that one that somebody sent today, who sent that one, that great one? I have it on my
That 6th grade one.
6th grade one, yeah. So that one was more of like along the lines of stuff I've used in the past. So like you use, you're using whatever, semicolons, and if you're 7th grade, you use like 1 semicolon, and if you're in 8th grade, you use 2 whatever. So it's a more aligned, and it shows. It's clear, I think, for the students that way. So this rubric confuses me, and I'm not sure how to.
One of the things that I think about with it is that when the kids do narratives, there's not a kid in 7th grade who always follows the 1 semicolon or the 2 semicolons or 3, or there's not a kid who follows the same way with dialogue. So one of the things I think about, and that's what I mean about norming the checklist and the rubrics, is what exactly does that part mean in terms of our kids in our school? And the one thing I found with the old way of checklists, and I've done those too, I've been teaching a really long time, is that these checklists allow the kids to have approximation and to have multiple entry points within it. And I think like at first we were grappling with it ourselves until we actually normed it as a community in a school. And what I mean by that is that we actually looked at it, we looked at kids' work, we looked at the rubrics, and we said, so this is what this means, and this is the same message for us across the school. I think one of the things that I like about these rubrics is that I can actually have an open mind towards, if my kid is not following exactly what's said on the rubric, but they are doing what looks like it matches the rubric, I can say as a community in the school or as a community, the kid is really on this level of the rubric or the checklist. Does that make sense?
The norming process for us was so beneficial, especially with the units of study being new last year. We had very uncomfortable conversations. We have 1 6th, 1 7th, 1 8th. And we just sat down and we're like, pull a piece of work. Let's look at it. Oh, that's what you want. That's what you want. And it was very beneficial. And now we're actually trying to align K-12 and K-5 just sat together and did the whole uncomfortable. Now we have to bridge 5th to 6th grade and do that whole thing. What does it really look like? Because you really see what the rubrics are saying. So I agree there, Janet. It is so completely important to do those.
And the other thing, like I think about, is that the checklists and the rubrics are based on the Common Core standards, which sometimes the Common Core standards don't make sense. There's like a mystery to it, right? And it's kind of like up to us to kind of say, here's what we think. And the other thing also is with the checklist, I could still give kids grades if they do a little part of the checklist. and I could see where their improvement goes, because the progression is the end of the year. The little things that they do going towards the end of the year is where I give the grades to. So sometimes it's not exactly a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's they got this part right, plus this part right, plus this part right, and that means that they got this score. Does that make sense? It's a little different the way we do it.
So they don't have. So in the checklist, in let's say just one section of the checklist in elaboration, let's say there are several pieces to elaboration. There are several. There are many skills actually in the 8th grade elaboration section, but so then it feels still subjective, because it's that if I feel that they're doing some of it and they're moving in the right direction, I can give them a yes on that. Or do I do a not yet? And if they're getting all not yets because they're doing a lot of great stuff, but not totally doing every single thing, then they're really not getting very good grades.
Well, for me, and this is a parent and a teacher. First of all, at the beginning of the year, I don't expect like my 3 kids to get the best grades, because I want to see the improvement. But the other thing is that if they have a lot of not yets, then that might mean they're not on the same grade level rubric or checklist that they're using, which might mean that I have to use a younger grade checklist in order to kind of scaffold them to the growth of the rubric on grade level, right? So when I kind of look at the checklist of the rubrics, I kind of think about where are they in the beginning at that first on demand, and then what is the level of improvement? So my grades come from the level of improvement as well as from where they are on the checklist. So it's not only the process, but it's the product, the process, and the quality of work the kids do. So it's 3 different ways to do it.
So, well, and like I said before about having the progression, what I'm trying to do with some of my staff right now is to take our curriculum document that we have, and it's kindergarten to grade 9. I'm noticing that there's very little depth to the document. It's got lots of great skills and progressions, but nothing of depth. Like when I taught grade 6 and when I taught grade 9, what did I teach different about characterization? That was a big eye opener for me at the Teachers College when I was there, because I had just taught grade 9, grade 8, went back down to grade 6. We're having some shuffling in our school, so I just go to whatever grade they need, and now back up to grade 8. And I had to really do some soul searching. How different did I teach character when I taught grade 9 than when I taught grade 8 than when I taught grade 6? Our curriculum does not have that depth at all. I find that this has the depth. The Common Core to a certain degree has the depth. Unfortunately, our parents are expecting me. I'm obligated to report what I see. I always say to the kids, show me the money. If you don't show it to me, then I can't give you the grades. So if I say to a parent, I'm grading your child on where I want them to be at the end of the year, I'm going to get a lot of pushback.
That's what we're getting right
because
now.
I have to go. I have to
even
out
though
to go
I'm-
to a meeting. I'm so sorry. I'm so sad, but I'll
No problem. Just watch
Thank
the
you,
replay.
guys.
Watch the replay. I'll post it. Okay? Take care. So what I find is my parents have come to know me, my students know me as, a pretty tough cookie. I have high standards. I have high behavioral standards, but I like to have a lot of fun as well. So I want my kids to know immediately what is expected of them. A principal walks in my room and says to a kid, hey, what are you learning today? They can say, we're learning this. Mrs. Bose thinks it's important that we do this, so that's why we're doing this. How is she assessing it? This way. I go out of my way to do that because my job, I have an obligation to my parents as a professional, and my school division might be different places, to make sure that I am grading the kids on what they've shown me on that unit. It shouldn't matter when I teach that unit. I know in my mind that at the end of the year, I want them to be further than that. But what I'm seeing right now is at a grade 8 level for at the beginning of the year. And so I really think that I want to use those progressions. And I've got charts up all along my wall for the next PD day where it says grade 6, and then it has the main points, character, elaboration, et cetera, et cetera. And I want those teachers to say, what are you doing different? So that they can see. And then we will come up with a progression, which will be exactly like this. Like, it will, because this is beautiful. But they have to develop it themselves, first of all. We've developed all our own rubrics, all our own reporting. That's where the learning came. But we'll have Lucy's to use as a, they'll say, oh, look at Lucy Calkins and her team developed something very similar. But I can't use that as my main grading scheme. That's my philosophy. My grading scheme has to align with what my obligation to children is. And my obligation to children is to grade them on what they show me. And so that's where I will not use the progression. I haven't even tried it, so I'm making some pretty bold statements. I've looked at it, and I think, wow, that's fantastic. But that's going to be my underlying philosophical document. The kids are going to see it and see where they're supposed to be going, and there'll be bits of it on my rubrics. But I won't be using a 4-3-2-1 based on that or a progressing. So again, I might talk totally different about this if you talk to me in 3 months after I've taught my first rating unit. So that's where I come from on that. Comments? Questions?
The thing that I hear you saying is that it's like almost agreeing with what I'm saying, is that the teachers have to come together and actually agree on how the thing is scored, what the norms are, etc. And one of the other things I'm hearing you say that I just absolutely love is the fact that you're looking at it as a progression across the grades. Because one of the biggest things we conquer in New York, and I don't know about you guys out there, is the fact of transference. And how do kids transfer across the grades the work that they need to learn? One of the things about the checklists and the progressions that help me with transference, like you said, which I'm agreeing with you, is it does show the way the kids progress across the years. And it shows that if I taught this in one grade, now here's what I would be teaching in another grade. And one of the things that I think about with report cards as a parent, now I'm going to take the parent's angle, is that I want to see where my kids are taking some of the stuff they've learned in other grades and to see how that's still being grown and deepened. Because I think sometimes we tend to teach things new all the time, or it feels like new, or the kids think it's new, and it's actually things the kids already know. So when I grade, it's also thinking about, and this is me as a teacher, it's also thinking about where did the kids come in, where were their entry points, finding out what did the kids already do last year, and then now where do I want to get them to by the end of the first marking period, by the end of the second marking period, by the end of the third marking period, and then kind of pinpointing certain parts in the progression that I want to create as goals for my kids to get me there, and then thinking with other teachers about how would I get to that point, and what will I do?
Excellent.
So when I do that, then I'm really focusing in on skills, strategies, or behaviors that my kids need and really want to build upon that based on where they were the previous years, based on what should be transferred, and based on the goal that's set either through the progression, the checklist, or your rubrics are serving similar to what we're talking about, right? The thing with grading is that I want to make sure that I see, and that's what I was saying before, and you and I are both agreeing with that as well, where I want to see where the kids are entering into my grade, and then where do I want to see them by the end of this period. So if they're entering at this level, I want to see the depth of knowledge and understanding that they gain up to the next level, right? So it sounds like we're kind of agreeing with it. Yeah.
Oh, totally. It's just, I think it's a matter of how we're going to put it into packages to suit different things. Because I know as a parent, we're standard-based grading in my children's school here. I teach in a different district than my children go to. And my husband absolutely detests standard-based grading. It's just give me a number. And he thinks rubric is a made-up word that only teachers use. It's not a real word. It's garbage. He doesn't want to know that. I want to know what in math exactly are they strong at, they need improvement on, they're growing on. I want that, but he's kind of trying to be the voice of reason to me as a non-educator. Joyce, we don't understand any of that. We just want to know where our kids at. So it's finding a balance, because our kids need to know that, and our parents need to know that. It's just finding that balance.
The other thing about finding the balance also, and this is something we're trying in schools in New York City, is the parents are becoming part of the norming system. where we're actually having them join in with their kids, with the teachers at parents' meetings and sessions in some of our middle schools now, saying, what would you expect to see, or what do you think this would sound like? And then kind of teaching the parents as well as the kids and ourselves in the community, this is what our expectations are. Because like for people like your husband or my husband who has no clue, or, other people, it's really teaching them the content and teaching them the skills and teaching them this is why we're grading this way and this is what you should expect. So bringing the parents into the conversation is so important.
Oh, for sure. And after 7 years, they definitely are more receptive. They came to us first without having standard-based grading. Usually we've got our nice peeps in the elementary school to kind of pave the way. At least I know in a lot of the districts around, but ours didn't.
Yeah.
And so we were going bang straight into percentage. Nope. Descriptors only. And it's been a wild ride, but I can slowly see it. But we have to respect the fact that there will be parents that want both. But we have an obligation to make sure that our kids always know where they're at.
And you know what? Not only the parents, but all the content area teachers. Because the other part to it is that we're bringing in all the content areas so that everybody understands, everybody's on the same page. And we're also like forming an alliance with each other. So we're doing book clubs and studying the content together and creating these kind of normed rubrics or checklists so that we're all doing things on the same page. It's kind of cool, right? Yeah.
It is. And well, in a middle school, I don't know how yours are set up, but I've got my kids 52 minutes a day. That's it.
Yeah.
So the interrupters, and you have if you do like trying to teach them a little grammar, it's like, well, I'm down to 35 minutes of writing, and how do I fit it in and teach all those items and try to grade it along the way and grade the final one? That's But we're trying to figure out too with assessment, we've got the big paper that comes in. How do we get more information in our grade book along the way to show parents? You've got how many people in the class at a time. You're trying to meet with how many at a pop. How do you record all that too and report it in a timely manner?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what we're finding. That's what we're finding with our content area teachers. They're seeing themselves as reading teachers. Everybody's a reading teacher. I don't know one like even me as a drama teacher, I'm struggling with one of my productions right now because a lot of the kids can't read.
Yeah.
A lot of the kids are in grade 7 and they're reading very, very below, but they're wonderful, but they love drama. But I don't know going in what grade level they're reading at. I can go look at their school-wide stats because I have access to that. And when I go and look at the school-wide stats, I go, oh, that's why they're not memorizing their lines.
Yeah.
That's why, because we have that school-wide screen. Because we have that school-wide screen, I don't always think that the numbers are accurate. But I keep saying to people, it's a screen. It's supposed to go, oh, you stay here so that we can dig deeper. Well, the kids don't even try. They just whatever. Then when I do something else with them, they'll come out totally different and I'll say, have a good day, honey. But when they float to the top and I can see things like that, very few of them really are not trying as much as they say they are. And they're tough conversations. It's tough conversations to hear you're below grade level. We use below grade level, significantly below grade level, at grade level and above. And some teachers still will not have those conversations, and I don't blame them because they will get attacked because they don't have the background maybe that some of us have. I can baffle them with bullshit. I can say, but this is going to help them, and this is going to whatever.
Listening to it is that with the descriptors, the conversation becomes deeper. So, and with productive struggle, and this is what I tell the kids all the time, I tell the teachers all the time, productive struggle actually increases the kids' understanding and comprehension. And a lot of times kids can't admit they don't know anything because they haven't learned that it's okay to make mistakes, right? And mistakes are made all the time. And one of the ways to help them make that mistake is to use those descriptors to say, so now where do you need to do the work and what do you need to do? And I think sometimes it's not telling them that they're below grade level as much as telling them, here's where they are, and here's how you and I can work together, or having the kids tell you, here's what I need to do. So having
Absolutely.
that open conversation.
And if my student is still in the in the room, I'm not sure if she is or not, I know they get really sick of me saying, but guys, we're in grade 8. I know you've got more in you. I know you've got more in you. Like when I ask you a character trait and you tell me he's happy or he's sad or he's tall or something, I just go, no, that's not enough. That's not okay. Why are we doing that? You know what I found? Vocabulary. They just couldn't find the words for it. So I gave them a list of character traits. They started using them in games and whatever. All of a sudden now, what's that character like? Oh, he's so rambunctious, Mrs. Bowes. Da, da, da. Like, those are the conversations now, just because they didn't have a character trait list. But then I had to think to myself, did I give that to my grade 6s when I taught grade 6? Nope. Because I didn't know what they were supposed to know for characters. I just assumed if they knew who the characters were in the story, and I've been teaching 25 years, you'd think I would catch on a little bit more here, but there were so many other things to worry about. Yep, they know characters, they know setting, they never thought of the depth that I was missing out.
Yes.
So I always say to the kids, I know you're going to get sick of me saying, but guys, we're in grade 8. I want you to be able to hit grade 9 and knock it out of the park. That's my wish. So it's not that I'm trying to bring you down. I'm trying to bring you up, because I don't want to have to worry. I don't worry about my students when they leave my room, because I know roots and wings, baby. You know, just off you go, because I've given you everything I got, and you might not have always liked me, but you're going to handle it. And so they get sick of hearing it, and you can tell they're just like, oh, God, here she goes again on the lecture series. But they need to know that what they're doing is not okay. But we're going to get there. Oh, are we ever going to get there? So we just rolled it back. I went back and taught a literary elements unit that I did teach in a much lower grade before. But man, you should see the stuff I'm getting out of them now. They just need a little rewind and then go through it.
That's what surprised me last year when we did the writing units the first time is, man, the expectations jumping in, they didn't have the background, the K-8 background. We just kind of, hey, you're in 8th grade. We're going to try this. We set the expectations high. Even some of the low kids, and my coworkers in here too, he can attest, even some of the low kids, they saw the expectations were here on that progression, and they're like, okay, here's a 1 and 2. That might be, kind of equals to C-level work, but dang if they didn't try, because they knew, here's the descriptor on the checklist, rubric, however you put it together. We took the checklist and put it in rubric form, just so they could see that whole progression of each descriptor in kid-friendly terms. Dang if they couldn't do it. But they saw those expectations and they started to push themselves in depth versus me saying, go deeper, guys. They see the rubric. They go, I know what to do.
Yeah. And it's very empowering.
Yeah.
It's very empowering. And because I've taught high school, I get the cred. I get that she's seen it, man. She knows what she's talking about. She's seen those high school kids, and I've seen it. And it's about independence and it's about confidence.
Yeah. The big thing is independence, right? When they can actually do the work themselves, and I don't have to say, here's what you didn't do or what's up with this, that's when you get the actual depth and understanding, right? And through those descriptors, like to me, the descriptors are more important than the grade. I think sometimes we worry too much about grades and we forget about here's what the kids need and here's where we need to go. And I think sometimes when we're worrying about grades, we're forgetting the kids in the classroom, right? And teaching them to read those descriptors and teaching ourselves and parents to understand the descriptors is where our work lies right now. And I think one of the things in New York that helped is bringing the parents in. So the parents start understanding that their child is not a grade. And I know it's like, it is a slippery slope. I saw someone write that between middle school and high school. But one of the things that I've learned is that I have some kids in college now. And when I think of college, the college professors are looking for the kids to take the ownership and to take this independence. And what I learned in one of the statistics is that 26% of kids who don't make it through their freshman year of college, it's because they haven't had that independence and understanding to be able to say, here's what I need to know, here's what I need to do. So one of the things I try to keep in my head all the time, and sometimes it's hard, is that grading is not going to help the kids. It's not going to define them. What is going to define them is teach them how to look at those descriptors, how to look at,
Yes.
here's what I need to do next, and how to realize that failure is actually something special and something great. And then how do I deal with that failure? Because the other thing I know dealing with now middle, high school, and college is that sometimes our kids don't know how to deal with failure because we tell them, no, you didn't do it right. And we need to teach them to deal with difficulty, just the same way that we teach them to deal with success.
And that's just so common across everything, with the diagnosis of anxiety to the level that it is. And as a mental health educator, I teach a mental health curriculum that's being piloted right now with grade 8, 9, 10 students, and I'm one of the instructors for it. Our kids are confusing anxiety with uncomfortableness. It's supposed to be uncomfortable, people. There is an elephant charging at you. You need to feel uncomfortable or you're dead. And people are coming in and swooping in and saving the day. And the ones that in the long run said, you know what, I really blew it, but look it, I turned out okay, are the ones that are always going to land on their feet. But it can be nasty in the meantime.
What's nice too with the progressions, your lower kids, we're teaching them how to fail, but our upper kids, when they see, in 8th grade, they look at that 9th grade expectation, which is considered a level 4. Our top kids are pushing themselves further than they have before as well, which is awesome to see. They'll ask, what does that mean? Because when I cover the rubric, I look at level 3 because that's grade level. This is where I want you guys. Those 4, they're going to push themselves, and that's also awesome too. Besides just the failure part, we have that success side.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting that you said that, because something that Cornelius said, hey, shout out Cornelius if you're watching this tomorrow. Something really resonated with me. I really reevaluated my practice in one of the sessions I had with him in small group. That's exactly how I write my rubrics. I say to the kids, what am I expecting you to know? And how are you expanding it? And how does it go down? And I don't do that anymore. I say, how are you going to get a mastery? What does mastery, it's a total paradigm shift for me. When I started standard-based grading, it was, what is you're passing, you're progressing in our case, or the meeting expectations. And I always develop that with my kids. Okay, what does this paragraph need? Oh, it needs a variety of sentences. It needs whatever. And then we might go up and then we might go down to see what they look like. I don't even go there anymore. I say, this is what you're going to do. And man, I'm just going to show you, I printed out one of my rubrics here. This is for representation. I don't know if you can see it or not, or if it's backwards, or what. Is it backwards for you guys?
No, it's forwards. It's just kind of small.
Yeah, it's hard to see. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm trying to get across is, if you're exploring thoughts and ideas, if your topic is insightful and imaginative, and you start with that, like today I was describing this project that we just did on characterization, and I said, what does insightful and imaginative look like? And they said, well, not just something you'd see everywhere. Yeah, these are the ones that when I put up on the wall and someone walks by and reads it, they go, holy, I say blow the doors off. That's the phrase I use. So it's insightful, it's imaginative. Your purpose is so clearly evident. It's not, yeah, I think that's what they were supposed to do. And I start there. And I quite often don't even get to progressing. I just stop right there. Because why not shoot for that? And I haven't done writing yet. I've been focusing all on reading and developing behaviors. I have a lot of non-readers, so I've just really hopped in there. But for these, like this is for a representation project, I just think that's something that I'm hoping to use with the progressions too. This is mastery. This is what it looks like. And you know what? This is what grade 9 mastery looks like. And you know what? At the high school,
so one of the other things to think about is, like, when I do that with a 1, 2, 3, 4, one of the things I also tell the kids is by the end of the year or by the middle of the year, we get rid of the 1. The 2 becomes the 1, the 3 becomes the 2, the 4 becomes the 3, and then the 4 becomes the mastery. Because one of the things about it is that, I don't know, there's like a difference between like how I'm going to grade and then how I want the kids to think and learn. Right? And one of the dangers that I always worry about is that if I say this is what they need to reach, then the kids stop at that reaching point and they don't move further ahead. So I'm always making sure that the kids know that the one's going to disappear eventually, and we're going to have that stepping stone. But the other thing also is that when I read like Marzano's way of grading, and I read some of his stuff, and then I read some stuff from Randy Bomer. I'm a big Randy Bomer fan. If you want a really good person to read some of this work from, Randy Bomer has a book out. I cannot remember the name. That's excellent for it. And one of the things he said is that we can't let ourselves fall into the trap of worrying about the kids always looking at this rubric as, I need to get that 4 grade. Because then he says they trap themselves into a hole where if they don't get it, they feel like they don't meet success. So one of the things I'm very careful about is that with the kids who are on the lower levels, I show them where they can go. And it's kind of small group work instead of whole class. Because what he kind of keeps reiterating is like feedback. And he thinks about like, how do I give the feedback on an assessment or something they do? And what do I say to make sure that the feedback is actionable and it's reasonable, but it's also attainable for the kids. So right. You know, I like looking at the 4 as well, but I'm very careful because of what I read from Randy, and because of what I've heard from Randy to say, to say that I do not want to make sure the kids think they can't reach that goal. And sometimes that 4 for some of the kids, especially if they're struggling, are places they can't. And then for the higher level kids, that's the goal I want. But then I want them to know that that's not even a goal by the end of the year. They still have to go up more, you know? So it is a slippery slope. Anyway, I have to go because my daughter just walked in. So nice meeting everybody.
Thank you so much, Janet. And we'll be in touch soon. Okay, take care. Yeah, I think what she said resonated with me too, about the moving it forward, the 2 moving up to a 3. That's where I'm hoping our work will go in those progressions that we're working on with our team. Because right now we develop these we call them common rubrics because every grade uses something similar to this, but there's not a lot of distinction. The distinction is in our heads, but it's not on paper. So if our grade 5 discussion or a grade 6 discussion rubric, how does it look different than a grade 7 rubric and 8? But even though it's still measuring the same things. So that's our work that we've got cut out for us. And
for writing, we use All Lucy, and I like what Janet said, but now if I go up to grade 9 and now that bumps down to a 3 eventually, there's nothing left. Or how do we bridge that now from middle school to high school? And again, going back, how do we report that to parents that almost our expectations are changing throughout the year? If right now it's a 1 and now it's off the chart, or you're at a 2, but that bumps to a 1, how do we explain to parents that sliding chart?
Right. And that's interesting because that's already something, talking about putting the cart before the horse, but when looking through the progressions and looking through the all the materials that are coming with them, because I'm getting a whole bunch of reading ones and because I'm doing some in-servicing. But I think I've already decided that just out of continuity, I think our 6s are going to use the 5 units. And our 7s are going to use the 6s, and our 8s are going to use the 7s, and our 9s. And then we can play around between the 2. Like if you really, really want to do that historical essay on this, and this, we'll trade. But the progressions, I think, will follow that way because we have grade 9s in our school. We don't always in a lot of our schools. Our grade 9s usually go to high school, but we do. So we want to make sure we have that progression. I know that if we use these progressions that are grade 8 for our grade 9s and just make sure they're solid, I think our kids will have a solid, like there's a lot of deep room there for our kids. So that's a decision we have to do if we go as a staff towards it. My goal right now is just for them to see that there needs to be a progression. And then if they want to start following a workshop model like mine, that's great. But my principal right now is a huge literacy leader. And the next staff meeting, she said, everybody bring a writing sample. We're going to throw them on a table. We're going to say what grade they are on top, and we're all going to put what score we would put on it if we were teaching that grade. And there are some people very
Right.
uncomfortable because maybe they haven't taught grade 8, maybe they haven't taught grade 9. If we were really cemented in our belief system, I think we'd be able to do it, even if we hadn't taught it. So it'll be really interesting to see. But that reaching for the math is big.
How did you went to standards based, you said, right? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So
how did you make that change? Because we kind of struggle with that because there's so many things factored into grades. It's like our whole building has to go or not at all. So English is kind of stuck in the middle where we're trying to do standards, but it's tied with a grade. What do we do, or how do we go ahead with that?
Well, I think for our school, it was really interesting because I'd been doing a lot of reading on standard-based grading, but I was teaching at a very elite private school. And so I was teaching, the 90.
Oh, are you there, Tracy? Oh.
99th percentile. So, and then come on back. Oh, there you are. You're starting to move. You were just kind of frozen there for a minute. So when I left the private school, I went off and did a year of consulting, which verified to me that that's not for me. Oh, I love it. But I missed the kids after 2 months. I just missed.
Anyone else care to jump in? I just sent that. There's the dial in. I don't know where Tracy went.